A lasting tribute was unveiled today to a woman whose advocacy impacted generations of Philadelphians. A portrait of Queen Mother Falaka Fattah was unveiled today at the Church of the Advocate in North Philadelphia. Fattah, who was there to witness the honor, is the co-founder of the House of Umoja. The House of Umoja was worked with young people and community leaders since the 1970s to reduce gang violence.
There was no holiday for gun violence this weekend in Philadelphia. Police are investigating more than 20 shootings that took place since Friday throughout the city.
A burst of gunfire left 3 people dead and 11 others wounded on Philadelphia's South Street.
Carjackings continue to increase, and that has some drivers in the city of Philadelphia on high alert.
According to the latest city data, at least 269 people have been shot and killed in Philadelphia.
We are here today to announce to the public, to Philadelphia, our strategy to save the lives of our people and to establish an enduring peace.
Imagine on Monday morning, if this pledge is adhered to, the families that will celebrate the fact that their children weren't shot down. There is no greater reason to give thanks than life.
Nobody has the answer. We just moving on out with faith, as we as a people have always done. There are 33,000 street gangs in the United States of America. There are more guns in America than there are people. And I want you to know that in the membership that is growing here for Partners in Peace, we have already established with the incarcerated brothers, the lifers that the House of Umoja has always worked with since the No Gang War in '74. They have sent out the word to me that they are supporting this effort. So if the brothers who are there and they are lifers, they will not be coming home, can give their support, then why can't we, who are able to get up in the morning, who are able to sit down for Thanksgiving dinner, why cannot we do this as well? We did it before. The reason why the banner says return to peace is because we did do it before, which gives us hope that we can do it again.
Do you have any solutions to the gang problem? What do you think should be done that isn't being done?
Well, they should open up more recreation centers, give these little boys something to do down there on the corners, you know, because, I mean, just like there's a playground at 16th and Burks. We can go there from 2:30 to 9 o'clock, and after that it's closed. And after 9 o'clock, they have nothing better to do but to come back and stand on the corner again.
They were inherited gangs in the city of Philadelphia. The Great Migration. Black people from the South, running from the Klan, running from lynchings, came to North. They came predominantly to South Street. There was a saying, walk South Street and find a friend. That friend was then known as a homie, and in gang terms, your homie was someone from back home, okay, who would help you find a place to sleep, a job, and so forth. If you lay out the city of Philadelphia, you had people from Virginia settle in one section, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. People had a tendency to move into neighborhoods where home folks were. So they divided up the city. So eventually you had about 80 different gangs who had carved up the city of Philadelphia, okay, claiming those streets, claiming those turfs.
Philadelphia is like any other big eastern city. You'll find all of the symptoms of the old urban area: decay, slums, high unemployment, and lots of crime.
Philadelphia was a disaster zone because you had children unable to go sometimes around the corner because all of the streets were labeled as which turf belonged to which gang. And so if you did not know where you were going, you could be killed very easily.
I remember a neighbor of ours who was in the age range of people who were gang worn. I remember him running down the street and running into my grandmother's house. And he didn't live there. And it was scary, you know. having this person running our house, but you know, nobody kicked him out because, you know, everybody knew it was dangerous out there, and we knew him. He was a neighbor.
My first day at high school, there might have been 300 members of the Moon Gang sitting on the steps. Me and a guy named Harvey went in. I went to my class, he went to his class. I'm sitting by the window, looking out the window every now and then, and all of a sudden, I see a stretcher. I see my man go out, and the only reason I knew it was him, he was tall and he had a leather coat. That leather coat might have saved his life because they were trying to puncture his leather coat. That's the level of activity every day that you had to deal with.
The mood of black people in the United States is one of militancy, and again, in my own personal view, that the National Conference on Black Power has done a tremendous service not only to our nation but to our world, and it is my experience that much disservice is done to our nation and our world when black issues are discussed in the presence of people who are non-black. Black people speak with candor, and it is only candor that can help us to come to clear grips with clear issues.
The House of Umoja began at the Black Power Conference, which was held in 1968 at the Church of the Advocate.
Church of the Advocate was a very significant place in Philadelphia in the late 1960s and going through the 70s and 80s. Rallies were taking place, you'd have meetings there, and African drum and dance traditions created a mouthpiece. So it gave this creative outlet for folks that as you had your political and social agendas, the cultural agenda was able to speak and merge.
More than 3,000 black people came together, not so much to agree on a single philosophy, but on ideas which would lead to more practical applications of black power.
You were instructed to go wherever you had your skills, that you were not permitted to have the luxury of just picking a workshop you might have an interest in. And since I had been a journalist for many years, I went to the communications workshop where print and electronic media professionals examined the image of us as African people.
Is this your first watermelon contest?
And it was decided that we as a people were expendable, that this country had a tradition of killing what it doesn't understand. And since the assassination had occurred in April of '68, since the riots had occurred, the 60s were totally a devastating time. And so as communicators, we decided that we had a unique responsibility, not just a professional one, but a moral responsibility to explain ourselves, to be better understood as a people. And I sat in the back of the room. I want you to know I did not raise my hand. I did not volunteer. But because I had done a lot of publicity for my brother, who had been involved with the housing movement, they asked me would I take responsibility for helping to develop a new communications system, which wound up being taking the name of the conference, which was Umoja, and developing Umoja magazine. In West Philadelphia, I knew about a minister who had been a very close associate with Dr. King. So I made an appointment, went to see him, explained to him this obligation that I had made, and asked for his help. And Reverend Shepherd said, look, there's only two places where you're going to find black people. They're in the bar or in the church. He said, I can't tell you anything about the bar, but I do know a lot about the church. He said, so you come back to my church and do some recruitment. And he was true to his word. We developed what we call the Umoja Black Arts Festival. And Reverend Shepherd asked the good sisters to cook up some real good country soul food. And then my job was to, once people were feeling really mellow, to come out and do this recruitment, which I did. And I asked for volunteers The first young man that came up out of that grouping to volunteer was David, who would later be David Fattah, my new husband. He told me that he was an activist at Temple University with the Black Student League. He said, but he would stick with me as long as he could, and he would help me as long as he could. He stuck for 50 years. That young man, 2 months later, became my husband and instant father to my 6 kids.
It was very spiritual. I was walking down and I seen a piece of paper laying that had been rain drenched. And the piece of paper had a picture on it that I recognized. It had a picture of the Black Power symbol. That was the fist up in the air. So when I seen that, I said, well, I gotta, check this out. And then that's when I saw her. I said, well, she's doing this. And then I said, well, I better help her.
House of Umoja, in its beginnings, was to be a publishing house. We had no money. There was a Baptist printing firm, and they agreed that they would print Umoja magazine.
In 1969, we started to get large numbers of telephone calls asking us why it was that brothers were killing each other in the street. The media was making a great deal of noise about the situation with the gangs. And I imagine the reason they were calling the House of Umoja was because we were talking about a philosophy of brotherhood. And certainly people killing each other had nothing to do with brotherhood.
A lot of killings were taking place during that time, a lot of fighting, a lot of people were approaching me to join a gang, and I just stayed away from all of that. It was bad, and it got worse as we approached the 1970s. There were just a lot of people killing each other.
I wanted to find out more about the issue. I asked my husband, brand new husband, if he would do some research for me, since he knew the street, and bring back information so I could begin to understand what the problem was made of. And so that's what he did.
He frequented bars, pool rooms, attended a lot of funerals, and went to hospital emergency rooms. Just hung out on the corner mainly.
But he came home one night and told me that one of my 6 sons, my 16-year-old son, was a gang member. And I couldn't believe it. My son was not only a member of a gang, but he was the heart of the corner. And I found out that the heart is the one that is the most loved, which meant he was also the target of whoever the enemies were. They were fighting his gang, fighting 2 other gangs. If you totaled up the membership of those 2 other gangs, it came to over 200 boys that would have considered it a trophy to kill my child. That's when the professional business stopped. And this whole maternal thing, how do I save my child? That overwhelmed me. At some point, though, I realized that I could not depend on anybody else saving my child. I began to realize, I guess maybe because I was a journalist, that I didn't have enough information. So I said, well, how do I get more information? David had given me a lot, but I didn't have enough. And so I said, well, if I could get close to these gangs. So that's when the idea came. Well, I could ask them to come live with me, because I'm not going out in the street where they are. And that's when I asked my husband for permission to invite my son's gang to move in. And that's when he told me I had lost my cotton picking mind. That was supposed to be it, but it wasn't it. Because if you're ever going to do something wild, it's best to do it the first year of marriage when the stuff is new. Because I just stayed on his case. I even started slowing them some of my good cooked meals over on the table, to the point where the man was just, I think I wore him down. Because one day he just said, look, woman, do what you want to do. Just don't talk about it anymore. I don't want to hear it anymore. And so, with that permission, I invited the gang to move in. And that is the beginning of what people began to know as not Umoja, the publishing house, but House of Umoja, where gang members lived.
I had two things in mind, which I shared with the boys, that I wanted to keep them alive and keep them out of jail, and that we would work on this together, all of us as a collective.
How do you first reach out to a youngster?
Well, usually what happens is most of the young people, as you say, come from fragmented families. And I think the first experience is one of just being able to rest. A lot of our youth, unfortunately, have had to grow up too fast. So I think that they first just enjoy the sanctuary and to be able just to rest and be a child.
First thing I did was I fed them. I realized they were hungry. They slept late because they were out late, so they would miss breakfast. But what I did was I put them on a different time schedule. I had a bucket of water, and I would go and sprinkle it in their little eyes, and I would get them up. In the meantime, I had already cooked, and they were not happy, but they couldn't beat me on mom. So they stumbled into the kitchen, and then they saw this wonderful food. They sat down, they had breakfast. And while they were eating, I took a blackboard and put it up in front of the table. And I said, look, this is a day that God has given to us. It is a gift. I said, so I'm asking that you do something for yourself first and do something for somebody else second. Divided the board. And I also put on the board wants and needs. Needs were everything that needed to be done to keep the house running. The house had to be clean. The house had to be in order. The house had to be safe. These are the needs. Wants were smoking pot, having girls, doing whatever. So I said, look, we as a collective take care of our needs. Your wants is on you, but you can't bring it here. I formed a committee with rules that we could all live by. First rule they came back with was no fighting. These are gang members. Their first rule, no fighting. Another rule was no get high. The rules were very practical, but the rules were made by the kids. And that's why they kept them, because they made them.
The beat of the drums in the community was the Umoja was a place to go to. Okay, the Umoja was a place to go to if you wanted a job. The Umoja was a place to go to if you wanted to get out of jail or stay out of jail. The Umoja was a place you go to if you wanted to improve your life. When I walked in the door, I saw a beautiful lady and I saw a hard-working brother who really cared. See, you can tell by a person's conversation and the way that they talk to you, the way that they treat you, if they really care or not. You walked into your Umoja, you felt love, you felt care, you saw opportunities, and you saw a chance to be a part of that opportunity.
The concept of sanctuary is one that is 5,000 years old, and it means a place where God lives, and it's a place of safety. So that was basically what we were attempting at that point.
The gang that controlled this particular neighborhood was known as the Moon Gang. The Moon Gang had over 500 members strong. And so Dave went to the leadership of the Moon Gang and told him that his wife wanted to allow another gang to move into our house. The Moon, they wanted an exchange. They said that as long they would allow his wife to have the kids and not harm the kids, as long as Dave would help them with their issues. That was the agreement, okay? That's how we established sanctuary. For the first time in the city of Philadelphia, there was a safe place that you could come to, and no matter what gang you came from. And once you got here, you were safe.
I recall people trying to paint House of Umoja as if it was a problem in and of itself, as if they were trying to make it like it was another form of a gang. Instead of this idea that it was an intervention against that said, hey, brotherhood matters, right? Let's change the terms of brotherhood so that it's a positive association, because that's what's drawing many of these young brothers to the streets. But I also think it came around at a time just coming off of this nation dealing with the Black Panther Party and that imagery around Black power and Africa as the thing for Black males to unify. I think that scared a lot of people. Okay, it's a gang intervention, it's a violence intervention, but it's a little too cultural for us to be comfortable with.
We decided, because we are an African people, that if our young people really knew who they were, it would change their behavior.
Today we hear so much about permissiveness and discipline. How do you maintain the family in terms of discipline?
All right. First of all, we have what we call is the Adela system. Adela is an Arabic word. It means just and fair. And it's basically a grievance session where everybody has input into what has, occurred. Anyone can speak on the grievance.
Since they decided that there would be no fighting and we had to talk out disputes, we called that the Adela. Adela meaning just and fair, that the dispute had to be agreed to until everybody said it was a just and fair conclusion. Basically, it was like people sit around in a circle. Somebody has an issue. They speak on it. From the time they speak on it, it means that their issue is no longer theirs. It becomes everybody's. It becomes everybody's problem. And everybody has a right to speak on that problem and what they think are solutions. Then solutions are taken from the group. And whatever everybody agrees is the solution, it becomes like an arbitration. That's the agreement. And what we did when we started having the gang conferences, which led up to the No Gang War in '74 campaign, was the kids said, let's have a big Adela.
When we talk about crime, I am positively certain that we're doing something wrong, and not only in Philadelphia, but in the entire country. Crime is increasing 10 times faster than our population. Now, what's the reason for it? I think I know the reason. The reason is that we're not punishing criminals in this country.
Mayor Rizzo was going to stop the gang killings, and he ordered all the gangs to turn in their weapons to the fire stations. A reporter came here because then it was pretty well known that I lived with gang members. So a reporter came here and asked me, did I think that the gangs were going to turn in their weapons? And I said, hell no. I said that I thought that the new mayor was a racist and that I could not conceive of any black person turning any guns, let alone gang members.
They don't trust Rizzo, just like everybody else don't trust him. If everybody gave up their guns, it'd be hassling us worse now. This is because he hassling us now while we got guns.
After the reporter left, I said, oh my God, what the hell did I say that for? So I waited until Friday's Adela. And when we talked about what had gone on during the week, I said, well, I have to confess, I think I made a bad mistake. The kid's reaction was, well, Mom, you always tell us to tell the truth. You can't get to a solution in Adela without telling the truth. You told the truth. He said, but maybe what we could do is get the gangs not to turn their guns in, but to put them away. I said, wow. I said, how do you think we could get them to do that? We could ask them. I said, let's just ask them. That was the idea of the gang conference. The only people I knew that were sitting down and were killing each other was people at the United Nations in New York. So I sent this letter to the United Nations and asked them how do they sit people together who were killing each other. And they sent me a big package back. And so what I could do, I took their seating arrangement and everything. I just kind of like made it try to fit, and it was on.
We began talking to them about how black folks had come to this country. We talked to them about the different problems that the black community was faced with. The fact that we needed manpower. We talked to them about politics. We had a book called 100 Years of Lynching. We told them all the different ways black people had died since they came to this continent. And we finished up with some questions. For instance, should black people continue to kill black people? People had lost faith in peace, unfortunately. People did not believe in peace treaties. People did not believe in each other. So what we were going to ask them to do was to stretch out, take the hand of faith in each other. Say, this is all we got at this point. We done used everything else, and that hasn't worked. So why don't we just try to believe in each other? So just keep your word.
Dave came up with Imani faith pacts. And the faith pacts were basically giving your word. If you give your word, you keep your word. And so they agreed to the Imani pledge, not the gang war.
We have an agreement from the youth that, the gang delegates that attended the conference, for them to make a commitment to no gang war in '74. This is what we have.
I was kind of intrigued about the messaging, that why are you fighting? What are you fighting about? You don't own that block. You will never own that block. You're fighting your brother. You have a common culture, and it was more Afrocentric. And so that was intriguing to me, and it helped me. It helped me to understand this is kind of silly.
They showed us where we were being self-destructive. They showed us where we were losing out on our futures and our families are falling apart. They showed us that we could build a community of minority people, for minority people that lived in love and peace and success, and not always violence. Because the greatest thing that we had was our reputations, and they weren't good reputations, they were bad. But they turned our bad reputations into good reputations.
We went from 60, 70, 80, 90 gang deaths a year down to 0. And the gangs basically stuck together, but the shootings and the homicides didn't happen.
If we do not deal with our youth, then we will not have a future as a people. If you say you want to do something for black people, they think that you are, for some reason, excluding the rest of the human race. And I just believe that we're all part of a human race, but I think that we have an opportunity here to get ourselves together, and that's the first responsibility a person has.
I pray that Sister Falaka Fattah could be bottled and then mass-produced and put on shelves in every neighborhood in Philadelphia, so that others that are in the halls of higher learning can take from, because it is worth learning.
You cannot apply a solution that worked in this set of circumstances that I'm talking about to today. So when you say people are looking for answers, yes, but it's got to be a different answer. Now, an answer that I think makes sense, which I'm trying to apply, is I want to take the houses where thousands of gang members lived here in 40 years, period of time. I want to develop a peace academy. I want to have as much emphasis on peace as it is on war. And I want it not just for this generation, I want it for generations to come.
Who's here? Our kids. We're gonna get our city safe again, y'all. We're gonna let our young people know that we're here for them.
There's always going to be deaths, intentional deaths. So there always has to be someone working on the other side. It's not going to be an instantaneous solution. You have to plug at it day in, day out. All these groups have different parts of the answer, but you have to come up to a critical mass. One thing is good, is that consent is not being given by the community to accept the killings in the street. That's step one. I'm still an optimist. I'm now 90 years old, so I'm able to look back. And I'm able also to look forward, because in our DNA, it shows that our ancestors are still inside our body, right? So I think that we're going to solve this issue, but then we're going to have new issues, because that's life. Life is change, so expect it, embrace it, solve it.